So FaceTime Live and or Facebook Live and YouTube Live. We are live now and we're here to answer all your questions. We've got a list we're going to get started with, but if you're not hearing a question you want answered, feel free to comment on Facebook or on YouTube and I will let Mark know the questions you're asking.
Awesome.
So we'll get started with question number 1 is from Brooke.
Oh, before we get into the first question, I just want to remind you guys, and I will say this more than once, so make sure you follow us on Instagram. Follow me, Mark, at Marc Silber. And make sure you subscribe to YouTube. Again, you can find me, Marc Silber. And our Facebook page is AYP Show. Okay?
All right.
First question.
Question number 1 comes from Brooke. How often do you use a neutral density filter versus a polarizer?
Brooke, I don't use... I'm embarrassed to say I've never used a neutral density filter. I probably should. But Huntington Witherell uses them a lot. In fact, we shot 2 episodes where he talks about them. The first one is, why don't you read those for me?
So the first one is from Photography Tips 5 Composition Secrets with Huntington Witherell.
Look that up on YouTube.
Less than 10 minutes and a bunch of great tips in that one. And then the next one is Landscape Photography Tips and Shoot with Huntington Witherell.
And if you want, that first one specifically was at 7 minutes and 57 seconds, but watch the whole thing. Okay?
We just got another great one actually that just popped up on YouTube that I will see if I can pull up here. It said, how do you approach strangers on the street for portrait photos? I think that's a good one. I wonder about that.
Okay, that can be pretty funny because I remember, I'll tell you a funny story. So I was in Rome, and I'm used to shooting on the street, right? I was in Rome, and this woman came by. She had a basket of flowers on her head. And I thought, wow, what a great photograph this would be. And I took the picture. I started taking the picture. She got really mad at me and started like shaking her fist. And that happened again in Morocco, same thing. So, you know, in some cultures, they consider that when you're taking a photograph, you're actually capturing their soul. Okay, there's 2 answers to this. One of my favorite photographers of all time, Henri Cartier-Bresson, you've heard me probably mention him before. He used to carry a very small little Leica camera, and he didn't ask permission. He was so like kind of in the shadows and come in and boom, take the picture and disappear. So that's one way you do it. I do go up to people though if I feel like it's intrusive and I feel like I need permission. I just say, hey, do you mind if I take your photograph? That's kind of how you do it. So you got 2 ways to deal with that.
Awesome. All right, so question number 2 is from Miroslav. What is your recipe for how to make best use of the light in a given situation?
A recipe. Okay, so that's a good way of putting it. So AYP, okay, here's our basic, I covered that in detail. So if you go to page 105, we start off with light is a language. Joe McNally talks about light is a language that you need to learn. The best thing to do, first of all, and this is something I learned from Bambi Cantrell, stick your hand out and look at where the light is hitting it. So in this case, I'm holding my hand up and I can see the light. I mean, I look up and I can see the light source because you want to identify the light source. Now, if you notice behind me, I've got windows. These are other light sources. You want to, first of all, notice where the light is coming from and how it's hitting your subject. That's basic point number 1. Because then, if you're photographing a person, you can have them move according to the light source. So this is actually not bad. I'm in a room that essentially is surrounded by windows. So we've got pretty good light all around and we've got light up above us. So this is pretty good, but it's not always that way. So first of all, see what the light source is, and then you can move your subject or you move according to where the light source is. The other thing I really recommend if you're shooting outside, and you've heard us talk about this in other videos with Bob Holmes, is shoot during the golden hours. So the golden hours are basically a half an hour before sunrise, a half an hour after sunrise, a half an hour before sunset, half an hour after sunset. So that gives you an hour each time period. The light is going to be warmer. It's going to be soft light. So if you're photographing people, it'll be more flattering. There's nothing worse than going out in the middle of the day and trying to take a portrait. Forget about it. You're going to get harsh shadows. It's going to look terrible. Go to the beach, go shopping, take a nap, do something. Do your photographing early in the morning and in the evening. So there's some quick tips, but you'll see a whole section of using light in my book. So get a hold of a copy of the book and just read through those.
Awesome. All right. So next question is from Hardik. How do you keep motivated?
How do I keep motivated? I like that question. You know, I study all the time, which means I'm always learning something. Just before the show, we were trying to set something up in our editing software, and I just look for answers, and I look for new things that I can try out. That's the best advice I can give you. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but if you read the book, I think you'll feel really motivated, because one of the things that motivates me is learning from other people. And when I do interviews with photographers, boy, does that motivate me to get out and try those things. So that's a really good, simple tool. Look at my videos and read my book. Okay, we got a question here. This is just, hey, Dale. Hi, Dale. Okay, there's no question. Ask me a question if you want, Dale. Okay, what's next?
So coming up is from Dominic. What are your key thoughts on composition?
Guess what? It's in my book. But composition. So here's some key thoughts. Basically, there's some guidelines. Composition isn't something that has set rules that you must follow. Study the masters. Go to a museum. I recommend in here, go to a museum a lot. George Lois, who isn't a photographer, but he's a designer. He designed something like 92 covers for Esquire magazine. Incredibly talented. And his recommendation is to go to a museum every Sunday. It's basically how he gets inspired, how he picks up, new ideas from very old artists sometimes, because photography, even though it was really begun in about 1835, it relies on the same techniques that you find in painting as far as composition. So if you look at classical painting, you'll get a lot of ideas. The best thing to do is to look at those things and then go out and try them right away. Leave the museum, and even if you've just got your iPhone, take some photographs that basically mimic what you just saw, okay? Framing is everything. What does framing mean? It means putting a border. A photograph is usually a rectangle. And just like this, you have a frame here. So the basic thing you want to do is try to include what you want to say within that frame and exclude what you don't want to say. Too many photographers leave things in that don't need to be there, and that's just going to clutter things up. It's just like having a messy house. Clean is going to look much better.
I think somebody said, and I can't remember what photographer, that they're responsible for everything that's in that frame.
Bob Holmes, you are responsible. I love the way he put it. You're responsible for everything within that frame as a photographer. So scan it. Before you press the shutter, look around. Oh, wow, there's this Coke bottle over here. Now, yeah, in editing software and Lightroom, we know how to get rid of that stuff. But I prefer to do all your composition within the camera. So scan the frame and take responsibility. If you got to move something around, do it.
Awesome. Next question is from Dennis. What is the best way to shoot a single product for a website?
Dennis, I'm not a product photographer, but the good news is that I actually interviewed more than one great product photographers. And the best piece of advice that I got, this is on page 200. Hunter Freeman, he does photographs for Apple and all sorts of high-end companies. And it's clean. Can you see that? See how clean that is? White backgrounds work great. You know, a clean, simple background for a single object is a good idea. He said something really cool in here. He said he looks for the qualities in the subject. For example, how does the light interact with an object? Or how is it used? And what's going to bring out the qualities of that object? So basically, if you were photographing this glass and you shot it just like this, it would not highlight the glass. There's too much going on behind it and so forth. So shoot it against a white background. Look at the light and how it's reflecting. And how is it going to bring out, what are the unique qualities of this glass? Take a moment before you press the shutter and figure that out for yourself. And then basically just try to capture that.
So Nora had a note about starting an AYP club.
Yeah, we have some people who want to start an AYP club. What is an AYP club? It's actually really simple, and I describe it in the book. It's basically a group of people who get together in a physical location, not online, and basically do a couple of things. One, they are like-minded. They want to advance their photography, so they can help each other by critiquing each other. And I describe in the book how you should critique. It's basically this. First of all, be positive. You know, sometimes you look at somebody's photograph and you gasp and you go, I don't know one thing I can say positive about it. But there's always something. The fact that they tried is a good thing. Maybe the colors are really awesome. So point that out first of all. And then if you see something that you feel needs to be corrected, point out one thing. As a viewer, you might say, you know, I feel like it would have been more effective if you'd gotten a little closer to your subject. That's all you need to say. Why don't you try another, you could even try cropping it and just crop it so I'm tighter in with the subject, so I have a better idea of what you want me to see. And then the person can go out and try that. The other thing you can do in an AYP club that's really useful and easy is you can watch one of my videos and then as a group give yourself an assignment. So let's say you watch a video with Bob Holmes and he's talking about travel photography. So take one point that he mentioned and then give yourselves an assignment. By the next meeting, everybody's going to go out and photograph that one thing, bring it back to your next meeting. You can critique it, and that just gives you a kind of an ongoing basis. When I was in art school, which by the way, I didn't attend art school for more than 1 year. Just so you know that. I am essentially a self-taught photographer. But here's the thing we did in art school. We had assignments. We would go out and photograph whatever that was. In my case, I had a family, a couple that I was living in their house. He was a woodworker, very talented woodworker. And I basically did a photo essay about them. And I'd bring in the photographs every week. You would tack them up on the wall, and the whole group of students with the instructor would go by and basically critique each photographer and move on to the next. Some of those comments I didn't enjoy. You know, the thing is, you have to get used to people looking at your work and saying things. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to agree with it. Just, okay, if you think it's true and you think you need to make a change, fine. If you don't, throw it out the window. But you should get, you know, kind of thick-skinned about this too. In other words, be willing to put your work up there and let people say whatever they're going to say.
I think it's another back to Hardix, how do you keep motivated? I think a group like AYP Club is a great motivation, inspiration.
Totally.
About your critique sessions, we had a question if you would consider doing a live video like you're doing now, critiquing people's photographs.
That is a good idea. I'll tell you what, you guys, here's what I want you to do. I want you to hashtag on Instagram AYP Club. Start doing that. And I'll check those hashtags and I'll critique a couple of your photographs. How's that sound?
That'd be awesome.
So if you put them there, you know that I might pick it up and do like a live Q&A like we're doing right now. Okay.
So hashtag AYP Club on Instagram, Facebook too, or just keep them in one place?
Let's keep them on Instagram.
Okay.
So hashtag AYP Club, okay? And I will be looking at those and we will definitely do another Q&A. Awesome. I've got a question here, it looks like. Do you crop your images post? This is from Russell. Yes, I do, Russell. I am kind of an old school photographer in the sense of, when I was in art school, we considered it a kind of a sin to crop. All your cropping occurred in your camera. We printed full frame always. And a lot of times so you could see the edge of the negative, which is kind of a cool effect. And you'll see that. Annie Leibovitz does that. Some really great photographers. Arnold Newman, I believe, used to do that. Your feet can be your best zoom lens. I used to shoot with a single 35 millimeter lens. That was everything I did. So if I wanted to come in tighter, there was no zoom lens. You had to just move your body, move your feet closer to your subject or farther away. So yes, I do crop though, on occasion, not a lot, but if something doesn't belong there and it's just distracting, I get rid of it. Or if I didn't compose it like adequately and I just left extraneous stuff in the foreground or on the side, I'll cut it out. I do that in Lightroom for sure.
Awesome. Okay, so our next one is a little bit of a comment/question from Wilfredo. He says, "Hi Mark, I'm 24 years old and new to photography. I have reached a turning point in my life. I really feel deep in my heart that photography is what I want to pursue. My reason for this is because I feel that through photography I can show the people of my hometown the beauty and love that exist in the city through the eyes of Source."
I love that.
Yeah, super passionate.
Yeah.
I really feel like there's a story to be told. My question for you is what inspired you to write your AYP book? I feel like you're putting a lot of great and very useful information and for a super low price, even though you could charge way more. I can feel your passion through your videos, which has inspired me to take the steps to learning the art.
Well, thank you for those compliments, first of all. And, hearing that is kind of my inspiration. The fact that I've inspired one or two photographers is really something I love to hear. I had a guy come up to me. I was in an event, this was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. This guy came up to me, said, "Mark, I became a professional photographer because of you." I said, "Really? What happened?" He said, "Well, I decided I wanted to become a photographer and I started I didn't know anything about photography, or very little. I started watching your videos and you inspired me and I just changed my career path to become a professional photographer." A few months ago, I was out walking my dog Shyla, who we should have invited. I don't know why she's not here.
She's out on the front porch, soaking up the sun.
She's soaking up the sun. Anyway, we were out for our daily walk where we walk and take photographs. And this black kind of limousine car pulls up next to me and stops. And a guy gets out of it and I think, uh-oh, I hope I didn't take a picture of him and offend him or something. He goes, "Marc Silber, I've been watching your videos and I think you're great and just wanted to shake hands with you and thank you so much." So I always love hearing that I've helped somebody out. But Alfredo, you said something that really hits the nail on the head. You said read that part of how he wants to tell a story.
I feel I can show the people of my hometown the beauty and love that exists in the city through the eyes of the Source. I really feel like there is a story to be told. You
hit it right on the head. When you take a photograph, you're telling a story. I mean, it really is. This photograph here, I'm driving along in South Africa with my friends. This is in right near Cape Town, South Africa. We're driving along, and I see this. Now, this can be annoying when you're traveling with friends, because I'm always going, whoa, hold it, I gotta jump out of the car, you know. So I get out of the car, and I start to walk across the road. Now, traffic goes opposite to the US. In other words, right and left are switched. And I almost walked in front of a car because I was looking in the wrong direction. I literally almost got run over, which it's a good thing I did.
Yes.
Anyway, this tells a story of that amazing sunset in those mountains. It's Hermanus, South Africa. So it's a good idea. You can go out with a story in your mind. Like you said, you want to show the beauty of your town to people. So what are the unique things where you can find that and go out and photograph it? Just make a game out of it. I often have this feeling like photography is like a hide and seek game where I'll know that there's a photograph somewhere in that environment, but I don't necessarily see it right away. It's almost like you have to discover it. You have to go and take enough photographs and get in the zone, which I'm going to describe to you in a second. Get in the zone, and basically, if you're paying attention and you're photographing and you're not distracted, this is why when you're being a tourist and you're out walking around the streets, you're not going to get a lot of great photographs that way. Go out on your own. You've heard me say this before. Go out by yourself with your camera and just be completely focused. That's what I mean about being in the zone. It's like you are not also listening to music, you're not also shopping and carrying a cup of coffee and, you know, looking in the store windows. You're just being a photographer out to capture whatever, the beauty of that town or something unusual about that village or whatever it is. You're out to capture that. So I hope those tips help you.
Awesome. Something, this is for beginners, and I feel like maybe just any bit of advice. You just asked for the best beginner tip, which there's a lot out there. Cameras can be overwhelming nowadays. Everybody's out there shooting. What would be your best beginner tip for a photographer?
See this book? Read it. I'm sorry. I wrote this with a beginner. I didn't necessarily write this for beginners, but I wrote it for a person who's probably intermediate, but a beginner can pick this up if they want to advance. And I mentioned that in my last interview. There's a crucial point you have to arrive at, and that's not just true with photography. Cooking, snowboarding, surfing. If you're going to get good at it, you have to decide, I am going to learn this subject and I'm going to pay my dues. I'm going to work hard at it. It's not going to hit you overnight. Like all of a sudden I know everything I need to know about photography, you know, by watching one video. It's an ongoing process. Photography is like a long love affair. You have to keep creating that. You have to put life into it. It doesn't just automatically, you know, every morning you wake up and you're a great photographer. You have to keep yourself inspired and you have to keep yourself educated. But honestly, the best tip I can give you is if you're short on time and you want some quick advice, at the end of every chapter is this crash course summary. And they're from anywhere from a page and a half to 2.5 pages. You can read through one of these and go out and try it. It'll take you 5 minutes to read through or less, but get out there with your camera and put it to use. None of this is going to do anything if you don't try it and use it. And that's something that's a theme of mine throughout the book.
Carly on YouTube just had a question. She said, what would you say is a must-have lens?
That's a good question. Okay, my must-have lens, I use a Canon 5D Mark III or a Mark II, which is a full-frame sensor, and I define that within the book, as opposed to a crop sensor. Crop sensor is where it's, let's say this is full frame. Crop means just exactly what it sounds like, it's smaller. Now what that does is it magnifies your lens. Okay, so if you use a 35 millimeter lens with a crop sensor, it will actually appear as though it's a 50 millimeter lens. It'll be a little closer. My lens that I use like 98% of the time is a 24 to 70, and it's a great, to me that's just a great range. I use that all the time. 24 is about as wide as I usually like to get. 70 is great because you can use it for portraiture, you can kind of zoom in on things. I recommend that focal length. It's a 2.8, which means you have pretty good control of your depth of field. Another thing I would recommend, if you have a full frame camera, the two lenses I would probably want you to have are a 50 millimeter lens, which is considered normal. I say normal in quotes because what does normal mean? It means it sort of approximates what you see with your eyes.
Like a standard.
Yeah, it's a very standard lens. It's a good lens to learn on. I recommend a 35 millimeter lens. It's wider and it's just going to be very useful to you. One thing about using a 35 millimeter lens is because it's wide, you can easily lose your subject by getting kind of too much going on. So even though it's a wide angle lens, this is something Bob Holmes recommended. Go in close with it. Go tight with a wide angle lens and you'll get a cool effect there because you're going wide, but you're also going, see what I'm doing here? We're moving in on the subject. So try those, give those a try.
What were they again? Do you want to read? You said 20?
24 to 70, zoom. I also believe you should definitely photograph with a 50 millimeter and a 35 millimeter lens. Those are called prime lenses. They're not zoom lenses. Prime means it's a fixed focal length. It's not a zoom.
Awesome.
But having said that, your 24 to 70 will cover that whole range anyway. So you could just pick that up and go for it.
Do you have, as far as equipment goes, a place where people can go that you highly recommend for equipment?
I do. As a matter of fact, on our website, there is a gear page. You can go in there and it'll show you the gear that we use at AYP. I buy as much as I can through B&H. Uh-oh, we've just gotten disconnected here on Facebook, so I'm going to keep talking to you guys. I don't know. This is the way the world works sometimes. I guess we're back. Okay, good. So, sorry about that in Facebook land. Anyway, if you missed that, go to our gear page on silberstudios.tv. I recommend B&H. They have great customer service. They're really helpful. If you have a question, you can always call in your order and talk to one of the people there. By the way, thank you for reminding me. I'm giving a talk at B&H, a class. So for anybody who's in New York City, or if you're not in New York City, just fly there, okay? And it's going to be May 10th, which is 2 weeks from tomorrow, 4 o'clock at the B&H event space. If you're anywhere near New York City or you can arrange to be there, you should arrive. Here's a couple of reasons why. Yesterday, you're going to hear me talk about the book. I will sign books for you, and I'm going to basically give a rundown of what's in the book. But I also organized some really cool prizes, door prizes. Aha! So our friends at Think Tank, who we really like, are going to give away another one of those signature bags.
Those are awesome bags.
Beautiful.
Awesome bags.
$280 value. Some lucky person is going to walk home and take it home with them.
That's worth it.
Sam just told me yesterday they're going to give us some SD cards.
Oh, great.
I don't know what kind. They haven't sent them to me. Probably Extreme Pro, which are awesome, and those are the ones I use all the time. And I may get a couple of other gifts too. So You got to stick around for the whole thing. I give those away at the end. Okay. You can't just come and get the free gift and leave. But it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to cover a lot of ground. I'm going to answer your questions live. So if you're anywhere near New York City, please attend that.
Awesome. We got one more question for you from Eric.
Okay.
He says he's always having trouble with photo shots of aerial objects and phenomena and zoom stabilizations, especially at night. What type of video or camera is best, and what technique is best for this? Like when you're in an aircraft or a car. So it sounds like movement.
Okay.
And then he says night activity from a distance.
Well, you're covering a bunch of different points, but let's start off with night photography. You're going to want to use a tripod. It's as simple as that. That's your first tip, because you're going to use a long exposure. Your camera needs to be stable. Put it on a tripod. Depending on what you're photographing, it sounds like these are different scenarios. If you're photographing objects moving in the air, again, a tripod is really helpful, because here's the deal. If that object is moving and you're moving too, you're going to get a lot of blur. So let's just start with a simple point of get a tripod, put your camera on the tripod. If it's far away, then you're going to want to use a telephoto lens. I mean, that's kind of what I'm hearing there. If you're tracking something moving through the air and you want to stop the motion, which I'm going to assume you do, so you're going to use a very fast shutter speed, like a thousandth or more of a second, so that you stop the motion. And because, like, let's say you're photographing something moving through the air that can be very tiny, if you don't use a telephoto lens, it's just going to get lost in your photograph. So those are a couple of quick tips. I hope that helps.
Awesome.
And I think we've covered everything.
Why don't you remind people of where they can find you, and then about the AYP critique sessions if they want to send their photos.
Okay. Why don't you remind them?
So guys, Mark is going to critique your photos if you want to send them in on Instagram. So when you post your photo, just do hashtag AYP Club. He'll search for those, take a look at them, and then send comments. We might even go live, and maybe we can show your photos. So send your pictures in right away so he can check them out. Use hashtag AYP Club on Instagram.
And follow me on Instagram at Marc Silber. Subscribe on YouTube, Marc Silber, so that you can get all these new videos as they come out. You can go to our Facebook page also, where we post stuff. That's AYP Show on Facebook. So stay tuned in. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. It's fun, conversing with you and hearing your questions. I love answering these kinds of questions. We'll do another one in the not too distant future. How's that sound? Okay? Thank you guys, and remember to get out and capture your own images of life.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. See you again.